Hello there, curious-minded. Who owns you? Or are you going to make the bold claim that nobody does? After all, legally that's the case, isn't it? I have the right to go about my daily business until the government says there's a health scare and there's a lockdown and then I can't go out of my house. But, there's a social contract there, isn't there? We might think that our freedom starts with bodily autonomy. That was a big cry, wasn't it, of the feminists? My body, my choice, when talking about abortion. That principle flew out of the window during the COVID scare. At least it didn't come down to them pinning people into chairs and forcibly injecting them, as happened in Soviet Russia and other places of bad repute. Maybe we'll make a contract with the government to say, okay, I admit, like Proudhon said, I am filed, checked, numbered, stamped. Or you could take the attitude that we are slaves to our desires, as St. Paul said, and with which the Enlightenment agreed. As it said, yeah, and the way out of that is reason. Let's not be led by our emotions. Or you might think, I'd like to fly, but I can't. I'm a slave to gravity. I think that's exaggerating a little bit. Let's just take out the phenomena of the natural world and look at how you might be a slave in human society. Well, here's a marvellous thought experiment to tease this one out. It's called The Tale of the Slave, and it features in Anarchy-Stated Utopia by Robert Nozick. Now, there are run-throughs of this on the internet, so you can check some of them out. But I'd like to go straight to the examination, so let's go as quickly as possible for those that are not familiar with this strange thought experiment. In number 1, the master gets kinder and institutes rules, so we're not beaten on a whim. That's an improvement. In 2, things get allocated by the master to the slaves on systems of either need or merit. Number 3, the master allows his slave 4 days on their own, and you only have to work 3 days. The rest of the time is your own. That's a peculiar one, isn't it? I wonder why Mr. Nozick didn't choose 5 days on, 2 days off, which seems to be standard in most of the world. But here, I guess he's giving us a little sop, at least in the direction of freedom. See what you think.
Jobs, they can get fucked. I've had enough. Why do we have to do them? Everything's fucking built. You got a house? Yeah. You got a toilet? Yeah. You got a pub? Yeah. Well, sit the fuck down and evolve, you cunt. It's got to be stopped working. It's a trap. 5 days on, 2 days off. 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 How long does this last till you're fucking dead? 5 days on, 2 days off. 5 days on. And it's not even 2 full days off, is it? It's not 2 full fucking days off, because Sunday's right next to Monday. Monday's going, can you fucking feel me? Hey? Like you didn't get up till 10 to 4 this afternoon. You'll be back in bed in about 2 fucking hours. It's slavery, but we've got to get our own accommodation and food.
Number 4, you can work for other people if you want. But you've got to send a percentage of your wages back to me. And if there's a war, I'm afraid you're going to be conscripted. And here, peculiarly, in bracket number 4, but you can see why, we got a little provision by the master says, oh, you can't do any dangerous sports. I don't want you smoking either. Anything that threatens your health, because I want you as fit and well as you can be in order to work. Number 5. Let's say there's 10,000 slaves now, and we all get to vote except you. They have a good old chat about what they think, and then they democratically decide, but you're not allowed input or a vote. Number 6. Yep, you've got input now. You're allowed to input your arguments. Number 7, you're allowed a vote. If they're tied, exactly 5,000 against 5,000, then you've got the casting vote. And again, there's a little strange side note here. It says, this has never happened yet. Let's just say it's improbable. And then we reach at the glorious state of freedom known as Step 8. Whoa, you get a vote as well. If they're exactly tied, your vote carries the day. Otherwise, it doesn't make any difference. Now, are we in stage 8? That's the first thing, isn't it? I suppose this is kind of leaning towards a first past the post system rather than a proportional representation. But that's a little quibble, isn't it? The question is, and the fun of this thought experiment is answering the author's question. Which transition from case 1 to case 9 made it no longer the tale of the slave? Some of us would say, yes, we are slaves, even in our liberal Western democracy, even with a pension system, even with legal aid, even with the right to withdraw labour, we're somehow still under the control of others who we see to be above us. Now, not everyone's going to take that point of view. I guess it depends on circumstances. The step from 6 to 7 is interesting. You're allowed to argue, but you're not allowed to vote. This might be seen as the condition of women prior to universal suffrage, or indeed non-landowning men back in the day. But I'm not sure the local worker down the pub would have much of a chance to put forward his argument in the same way as people in positions of power. But is it that? Is that the step where you lose your freedom? The right to vote? Ronald Dworkin, in his commentary on this, points out that a lot of people think the step is somewhere between 4 and 5, because here, where you're allowed to go off plantation, so to speak, and work for somebody else, you seem to have the freedom to withdraw your labour. You won't have much money, you might go begging in the city, who knows? But maybe you stop being a slave. This would rather be like the condition of the wrongdoer who was expelled from a primitive tribe. That sounds like you're just doing, the best possible logistic utilitarian solution. In fact, you're condemning the person to death, unless they are expert foragers and survivalists. Now, before step 3 to 4, I think everyone would agree that this is a form of slavery. When we go into historical discussions, we get mired in discussions about whether it's actually slavery or corvée labour or indentured labour. The general idea is you're not your own person, in the same way as a medieval peasant in England would be restricted in behaviour and movement and association. Meanwhile, in Russia, they were officially slaves. Again, we muddy the waters by using the word serf, but until a lot later than in other parts of Europe. Well, I hope as you ponder this, that, like me, you think your life is quite comfortable and affords you enough free time to engage in this kind of frippery, and that you're not in confinement somewhere beholden to a master. I tend to think that, while I'm not free as a bird in this liberal Western democracy, I'm pretty much as free as a human being could reasonably ask to be in this sprawling global village. And at root, maybe the idea of freedom is a matter of perspective. But then again, if you're in some kind of bad condition and you're not even aware of it, that's hardly a consolation either, is it? The old conundrum, would you rather be a pig satisfied or Socrates dissatisfied, might come into play here, as would one of Gurdjieff's little aphorisms. The first step towards getting out of a prison is to realise that you're in it. But what sorts of prisons are we talking about here? I think they're more metaphorical than actual.
By the way, you lot, you're free to go. We'll see you back here at 7:30 tomorrow morning.
I am a free man.